Good evening, everyone. A warm welcome and greetings of peace. Hope all of you are doing well today. Today, our topic is creating healthy boundaries. When you think of a boundary, what comes to mind? You might think of something like a property line or defining lines of a shape. Boundaries show where one thing ends and another begins. Understanding your own boundary dynamics provides you insight into who you are and what you do, why you do in your relationships. Joining us today is one of the first Western women to come into contact with the Brahmakumaris in the mid 1970s. She was able to recognize the truth that the sisters who came from India at that time were saying and experience the depth of knowledge that was being shared. She has lived in the US for decades and also in Europe, UK, and in India. Today, she is joining us from Germany. Let us all together welcome Sister Denise. Good morning, Sister Denise.
Good morning. Good morning. How are you? Let me just make you able to see me. Yes, good. I'm speaking with you from Berlin, and I'm here for some work. And so it's wonderful to be here with all of you to talk about today's topic, which is creating healthy boundaries. So thank you so much, Jabin, for inviting me. So I would like to, first of all, point to the advantages, the unseen, hidden, and unexpected advantages from the corona.
Sorry, Sister Denise. I think we are having some internet issues. Kindly bear with us. Okay, it seems like Sister Denise is having some internet issues, so kindly give us a few minutes and I'm sure she will be back with us. Okay, you have to unmute, sister. Yeah, okay. Sister Denise, can you hear me?
I'm unmuting my.
Okay. Sorry about that. It's Something got to do with the internet. I think she has lost connection, so we'll just give her a few minutes for her to reconnect with us. Okay, so I just got a message from Sister Denise that her internet was unstable. She's back with us now. Sister Denise, could you kindly unmute yourself? No, we cannot hear you. Yeah, okay.
Very
Yes.
good. I was having trouble unmuting. Yeah, sorry. I just requested anyone else on this internet to close theirs, so we should be a lot more stable now. So I think what I should do is just go back to the beginning, because I didn't get very far, and you must have been thinking about the social distancing, and creating healthy boundaries is actually related to social distancing. And there are obstacles to creating healthy boundaries that I would also like to bring up. So first of all, what is a boundary? Well, it is, as Jabin was saying, it's a frontier. It's an area, a line that cannot be crossed by someone else. And so one of the interesting ideas that we work with in meditation practice is the idea of your aura. And your aura is like a radiance of light that extends beyond you. And in fact, it also constitutes a boundary. And one of the things that you can do, which I think is very interesting and very healthy actually, is to always, whenever you go into any social situation, whether it's a very close personal one or a very impersonal public one, but always think about your aura and creating this radiance of light that extends a meter and a half, some amount of distance between you and others. And why would we do this? The main reason is so that you are in your own area, your own territory, your own vibration. Because when you're in your own vibration, it is the energy of your own force field, the energy of your own mentality, which is the dominant energy, which means that in any social situation, whatever it is that you want to be happening in that social situation, you call the shots. And this is actually very, very healthy. I'd like to point out 4 different kinds of boundaries that you can think about. 3 of them, well, 2 of them are very unhealthy. One of them is not so healthy, and one of them is really quite good. So among the unhealthy boundaries, if you can imagine yourself in a room with no windows and no doors, and you are on the inside and you can't get out, and there's no one on the outside who can get in. And there are actually quite a lot of people who have created this kind of boundary, which is a completely inaccessible boundary. People who make themselves so closed off from the rest of the world that they are actually disconnected from the world, and people around them, people outside them, cannot actually make contact, cannot actually get in. And so you would be moving around, as it were, behind a mask, almost you can say an impenetrable mask. And you will function in the world, and you will feel that you're looking very good, but yet other people will feel that they can't really connect with you, and that there is so much of a barrier that they can't really develop a relationship. And if you have created such a strong and impenetrable boundary around yourself, then you will also feel isolated. You may feel abandoned. Some people do have issues of abandonment. And when you have an issue of abandonment, that you were excluded or left out or left alone, and you needed to protect yourself in a hostile circumstance or social situation, then you would create this impenetrable boundary around yourself as a form of protection. And this actually is an indication of some kind of trauma, childhood trauma, where circumstances were such that you just needed to build this fortress around yourself, and you never developed the ways of interacting with other people, so that some people are on the outside, some people are on the inside, which is a much more healthy situation. So now let me go to a second kind of unhealthy boundary, and that is a boundary which is perforated. So imagine you are in a room, the windows are open, the door is open, or there's no door, there's just a doorway, and there's holes in the walls, and anyone can come in, anyone can invade your space. You have no way to claim your own space, and it makes you actually feel very vulnerable, very exposed. And there are people who have created boundaries like this. And it can be also as a consequence of some kind of a traumatic situation. You notice that I use the word trauma and traumatic situation for both of these unhealthy boundaries, because unfortunately, there are so many circumstances in this world that people find themselves in, especially as children, that are really quite traumatic, and for which it is very difficult to recover and to grow in a healthy way. And that has to do with your social health as well as your personal health. So imagine yourself in this completely exposed situation. You do not have any privacy. You cannot, very often you cannot say no to people. This is an issue that sometimes people have. You feel exposed, you feel vulnerable, you don't know how to claim your space, you don't know how to distinguish between people who are toxic for you and people who are very healthy for you. And this is a very, very unpleasant, uncomfortable, and difficult situation to be in. And there are people who find themselves in situations like this, and they need some help, and they need to know what can they do to claim their space and put up some boundaries, and to also know that we have a right to our boundaries. We have a right to our privacy. I'll give you an example of this situation, just so that you can realize how difficult it can be for some people. And the example that I came across when I was preparing some material for some study groups in India was the women teachers who go and teach in villages. And the problem was that there were no enclosed bathrooms, no enclosed toilets for the women teachers. And so they were really in that situation where it was impossible for them to have any privacy whatsoever for their personal needs, their intimate needs. And this was really a very severe part of their work. And this is because the education system was set up by men, and so they thought about the needs of men, but they didn't think that the needs of women would be any different. And so regardless of how much women would say that this is what they needed, they couldn't get good response, and it was told to them that you are being greedy, you are asking for too much, you should be able to take care of yourself in the woods just like everybody else. But really, I found that quite an interesting example of how sometimes the existing social situation, which is more patriarchal, has denied women their privacy, which is a fundamental need, which may not be so much of a need for men in a men's world. And also young girls growing up will find themselves very easily in more dangerous, more vulnerable situations because of the same thing. And so we have to understand that the creation of healthy boundaries is not just only something one does for oneself, but it's also something that one has a right to, and that the society that you are living in has a duty and a responsibility to ensure that you can get what you have a right to, and that they recognize that you have these rights. Let's look at a third boundary system, which is not the best, but which is a lot better than the two that I have mentioned. So imagine again, you are in a room and there are doors and windows, and they can be closed so that you do have the possibility of your own boundaries. But the problem with this form of boundary is that the door handles and window handles are on the outside, which means that as long as other people do not invade your boundary, then you have a boundary. But at any time, anyone can open the door and come in without asking permission. And in this way, your boundary can be easily invaded. So while it's better than the completely closed boundary, you can come in and out, other people can come in and out. It's much better than the perforated boundary because you have some privacy. And as long as other people respect your privacy, they will not invade your privacy, but the door handle is on the outside, so that you are still in that sense, at the mercy of anyone who decides to invade your space or break your boundary. So this is why it is better, but it's not really the best. So let us see what is the best kind of boundary. So there you are, you're in your room, you have your door, your windows, and the handles are all on the inside, and your windows have shutters and curtains so that you are completely in control of the boundaries. If someone wants to come into your space, they have to ask permission, and it's absolutely up to you to give them permission or not. It's up to you to decide how much privacy you need and to establish that amount of privacy. And so it really is a boundary system that corresponds with you coming into your power. And I think that there are many people who feel that they're really not in their power. So the topic of coming into your power and the topic of healthy boundaries is actually closely related and connected. So let us look just for a moment at what it means to be in your power, to come in your power, and to operate from a position of power. And when I use the word power, I'm very aware that the word is used in different contexts, so I need to make it very clear what I mean. And the word power immediately makes people think of this expression that we hear of a lot: power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely. Therefore, if you're in your power, that may be a bad thing, a corrupting thing. But it's really something very different. Being in your power, I think, means that you are a person who is completely integrated within themselves. So all the different facets of yourself, all the different aspects of your being are integrated as part of a single whole. And where the different facets of your being are rather like different masks through which you can express yourself, and you decide at any given moment, in any given situation, what kind of mask you want to put on, because there is also this idea that we work with in the practice of Raj Yoga meditation, that we are actors, souls acting through the body and through a multitude of masks in order to play our roles in the best possible way. And being in your power means that you decide what you do, when you do, if you do, for how long you do or not, as you wish. So that means that your will is functioning and that you are having all your rights, you're enjoying your rights, and you also understand by your education and by your intuition where your boundary ends and someone else's begins, which means that not only do you disallow any invasion of your own boundaries, but you also respect the boundaries of others. And you have an intuitive sense of where your freedom finishes and someone else's freedom begins. So boundaries and freedom and being in your power are also connected. So when you are in your power, you are free to be yourself. Sometimes you may experience that you are in a social situation where people around you put pressure on you to be a certain way that is not what you want to be, or to behave in a certain way that doesn't correspond to your sense of self. Or they may even expect you to perform activities which do not correspond with the voice of your conscience. And these situations limit your power, and it is also an invasion of your boundaries, because they will, be having the door handle on the outside, and they will come in and impose their will on you against your will. So then you are not in your power, and you are not able to apply healthy boundaries. And in this situation, you have actually a clash. And these clashes are quite big, quite difficult to manage. And why are these clashes there? Is because of a clash of values. And there are many people who believe that it's not possible to have a clash of values. But I did a lot of research on values for a big project that I worked on. And one of the things I found is that it is really quite a misunderstanding, a misinterpretation to assume that if you have values, then they will correspond to everybody else's values, and that there cannot therefore be a clash of values. But in fact, it doesn't apply. And the reason is because values are based on culture, on age, on class, on education levels, on race, on gender, on all of these things which in the vocabulary that we use in Raj Yoga apply to external authorities. And so someone else's values may be that you need to comply with their values, and your values may be that you will comply with those values insofar as it doesn't go against your conscience. And in that line between the voice of your conscience and where someone else's values impinge on your freedom to do what you know is right, because what they think is right, you don't agree with, but you come under their force and you have to comply. This is where the unhealthy boundary starts causing a problem, causing suffering, and it even creates a situation where negative karma is performed. So you see, I'm building up on the subject, and you can see that it brings in the matter of values, it brings in the matter of karma, it brings in a lot of things that very often people don't really think of. One is not normally expected to analyze these things, because pretty much all the cultures we are raised in assume that whatever the values are that are passed on from generation to generation are always right, are definitely the best, do not need to be questioned, and must be good for everyone because they've been there for a long time, centuries. But yet we find that on closer analysis, there is such a thing as a clash of values. There is not, however, a clash of virtues. But a lot of people, they, when they're thinking about virtues and values, they think, well, it must be the same thing. But on closer analysis, you find that they're really not. Virtues are definitely universal. I don't think you could ever get a clash between love and peace, or sweetness and kindness. But values, because they're not based on the essential qualities of the human soul, but because they're based upon cultural norms and ideas about how society should run, which are created by the elite in any given society and are passed to the members of that society as ready-made good ways to do things, and they're taught from childhood. And so our problem here is that in a lot of cases, more than you would like to say, the values of a society mitigate against healthy boundaries. And now, why would this be? I think one of the reasons is the concept of ownership. From the point of view of the Declaration of Human Rights, which was put together at the time when the United Nations was brought into being in around 1945, you know, it is said that slavery is illegal. Slavery goes against human rights, and that a human being must be able to be self-determining. A human being cannot be owned by another human being, and another human being cannot own a human being. But yet, in many cultures, there is this idea which is considered as a high value and a virtue, and that is the feeling of belonging. So the feeling of belonging is maybe another word for inclusion, because I think it's very important for a person to feel part of a group. Aristotle had said man is a social animal. What that means, of course, man is not an animal, but is nevertheless biological. And man includes woman. But basically, a human being doesn't do well alone. And the fundamental unit of society is a couple, and then that immediately becomes a family. And so when someone is excluded, then that is really bad for a person. But there's a difference between being included and being owned. And yet people don't really make this distinction. And sometimes a person will have a feeling of possessiveness. Possessiveness is a kind of vice, which brings about jealousy. And this then becomes like an emotion and a motivating force to get a person to believe that they own their children, for example, or they own their spouse. And then from there, they decide what their spouse or child may or may not do, and they decide if they can do violence against their spouse or their child. And in many cases, the social system, the political system will say that, well, the head of a household knows what to do. The head of the household must be, by definition, responsible, virtuous, and a good person, motivated by the welfare of the people in their care. But what we find is it's not necessarily so. And this then puts people in a very vulnerable situation where they are denied the possibility to create healthy boundaries, and they are born into or get married into a situation where they're basically put in perforated boundaries, or else in these completely enclosed boundaries, where they are denied their freedoms and their rights. And this is something that has developed over time as the, what we can say, the spiritual strength of a society as a whole, as a collective, the spiritual strength of individuals has become gradually eroded. How does this erosion of your personal power take place? I think from my studies, I would say that partly your personal power gets eroded just because of time. The factor of time is something that actually impacts the human spirit, the human soul. So over time, the soul comes into action through the body, and slowly, slowly, the energy of the human being, the human spirit, slowly, slowly gets depleted. And you become less and less able to stand up for yourself in many situations. And the second force, which has actually impacted on everyone, is what I would call the force of negative karma. And the word karma is very popular, but it's used and interpreted in many different ways. So I'd like to identify what karma is and define it and how it works according to the studies that I have been doing. So basically, the word karma means just simply action. And the relationships that we all are in are predominantly with each other, but we do have a relationship with ourselves. That is also a reality. We have a relationship with the natural world, the planet, and we have a relationship with the divine. And when our interaction with all of these is compromised by maybe lack of understanding, maybe we are reacting to some negative provocation and we react with another negative action. And so overall, I think along with the depletion of the energy of the soul through time, there is a loss of positive energy through negative karma. And negative karma occurs when an individual is really out of contact with their own spirit, out of contact with the divine source through which they gain their energy, their clarity, their inherent virtues and powers, and they start to operate maybe in the opposite way. Many of us experience negative urges, negative emotions, and then through that we do negative karma. We may be depressed or angry or hurt, and we react to that, and then we compound the problem. So this combination of time and loss of contact and negative karma has put the individual and the collective in a situation where there are difficulties, where there is suffering, but yet it becomes quite hard to do anything about it and to restore oneself from that situation. And from the social point of view, it becomes quite difficult for a society to educate the young generation in such a way that they reclaim their power. And so we're in a situation which in many cases is quite dire and quite extreme. And so we have these questions. What is needed? What can I do? How can I come into my power? How can I be real? And you hear people making these statements. You hear a lot about people saying, I need to come into my power. I don't know how to come into my power. I don't know what it looks like to be in my power. You get many people who get distressed because their boundaries have been breached and they don't know how to create those boundaries, or they may be accused of being impolite if they create boundaries. There's a lot of sort of heavy statements that are given to people who try to protect their privacy to invade that. And it becomes really a problem that gets compounded more and more over time. And so because of this, we find ourselves in a situation where we need actually new information. And I think that such kind of new information is available, and that it comes from a divine source, and that one can study this. And we feel that we are studying that when we are studying and practicing Raj Yoga, as is explained and expressed at the Brahma Kumari's Spiritual University, because everything is very clearly detailed and defined, and it lends itself to analysis and deep thought. And so I worked on this for quite a lot, and I'm really very satisfied that the fundamentals are accurate. And one thing that I think is very important to think of when you want to begin the process of reclaiming your power and setting your boundaries is, what exactly is your identity? So there are many people who have identity issues. But from the angle of spirituality, your identity is your being as compared with the body. So what is a being? A being is intelligent, sensitive, discarnate. A being is neither male nor female. A being doesn't have an age. A being doesn't have a specific culture or a specific language. A being is a unit of consciousness that is made up of energy expressed as love, peace, purity, power, and bliss. And that unit of consciousness can think and evaluate and process ideas and understand the difference between good and bad, right and wrong, appropriate, inappropriate, internally. And yet this being is not really given space to be, because the world we live in looks at us as, when somebody gets born, they never ask who has come. They ask, what is it, a girl or a boy? Not really do they think about who is it. So from the beginning, a child is thought of as a thing, and things can be possessed and molded and made the way you want them to be. And so that child is not really seen as a being, not really seen as having an orientation, rights, perception, their own thoughts, their own ideas, valid questions, all this kind of thing. So I think the first step in setting your boundaries and reestablishing yourself in your power fully is to again and again see yourself not as your body, not as your race, not as your culture, your color, your education level. All of these identifying criteria that we are used to, they are not really the best criteria to use when you want to really be yourself and represent yourself in the world. And so there is this practice of soul consciousness. I, the soul, genderless, colorless, classless, bodiless. I'm a being who thinks and feels and understands, and I come into action through this body in interaction with other beings, in interaction with the natural world and with the divine source, knowing the laws of karma. So the laws of karma, well, we don't know the laws of karma. We have all kinds of people telling us what the laws of karma are, which are not necessarily in agreement with each other. So here we have learned about the laws of karma in a very clear and specific way, and that is that every action is performed by a being through a body, and there will be an equal and opposite reaction on the short-term, mid-term, and long-term levels. And I will not go into the depth of the laws of karma now, but perhaps on another occasion. But really, these things that we learn individual areas of this big study called the University of Life, but ultimately we have to bring in all the aspects and look at it holistically. So when we are looking at our boundaries, I think the first and foremost thing we must think about is that I have a right to set up healthy boundaries, and that I have a right to access to all the information and the strength that I need to establish myself as a person with healthy boundaries in circumstances which may be antagonistic to that, which may be difficult, which may be a society that doesn't agree with it. And this is why you need to be in your power to apply healthy boundaries. Well, I'm going to stop there and invite you to join me in a few moments of meditation so that we can just stop for a while and think about our own boundaries. And so just join me in that inner space of personal stillness, and think of yourself as a pure, peaceful, loving being of light. You dwell in the center of your forehead, as an energy, conscious. There's a radiance that shines forth from you, that creates an atmosphere around you. An energy of light and peace. Feelings of love spread into your space. And you are deeply connected with your innermost being. Feeling the strength and brilliance of your light. Conscious of yourself. You differentiate yourself from all other beings. You're self-aware, self-motivated, in your self-honor, having regard for your pure, true inner being. You're not any of your masks. They are instruments for you to play your role. Go close to yourself and feel that radiance. And then step out from the drama that's going on around you and connect with the divine source beyond. This is your friend. This is your backbone. This is the one from whom you draw your power, who reflects your real self back to you. Who confirms your rights and your freedoms. Let yourself be in your power. Consolidate that and be the real self. Enjoy that quiet, still tranquility. And gently let yourself return, reconnect with your physical form, spreading your radiance, interacting meaningfully with others. Om Shanti. Thank you.
Thank you, Sister Denise. That was amazing. And indeed an eye-opener. Before we start with the question and answer, I would like to highlight the points that you brought out today. You took us to 4 different rooms, and that is in fact something that we need to contemplate on. So which room have we been in, and which room would we like to be in the future or now? Which room would we like to move into from now onwards? And also, like how you said that there is a difference, there is a clash of values, but never a clash of virtues. And why the clash of values is what you highlighted also. And that we need to gain back our power. And the main thing to make us gain back that power is to remember who we truly are, that we are this energy, this being full of virtues. So thank you once again. And what I would like to also add is that boundaries allow you to be you. This goes for you or oneself and other people. It is a mutual respect. Boundaries offer a safe place to make connection and a safe place to honor differences. We have a few questions here. I will read them out to you. What would you suggest to create a healthy space against unhealthy vibrations, say jealousy, anger, etc.? That is not about creating it for 1.5 meter, but for the whole space, almost the whole universe that I am in.
Well, this is a very important question, but at the same time, we need to realize that, you know, you really cannot make somebody be the way you want them to be. A person will be the way they are. And so what do I have to do for me? I think the most important thing is to give time for meditation, because someone may be jealous, and because of their jealousy, they may seek to harm you. And if you're in your mind thinking about this person, thinking about their attitude towards you, you're actually giving away your power. And this is why you get so much affected by it. And this is also why you want them to be some other way, because you experience that you are being adversely affected by it. But there's another way that is probably more effective and more doable, and that is to empower yourself. Sometimes when a person is jealous of you or being unkind, you will take that in. And we have an expression that we use in our study, which is do not take sorrow. And a lot of people just don't realize how negative it is, how damaging it is to the self to take the sorrow that is offered to one. And I also classify this as a sin. You know, there are sins of omission, sins of commission, and then this third one, taking sorrow. Omission means you don't do what you're supposed to do. Commission is you do what you're not supposed to do. But allowing someone's negative feelings to go into you and taking it on, that is actually an option. We cannot truthfully say so-and-so made me upset. So-and-so did whatever they did, but if I got upset, that's up to me. And so I need to take responsibility for how I feel in response to another person's behavior. And why we have trouble is, I feel, because we don't have enough spiritual power. So I feel that the most important thing we need to do is to give time to meditation, which means give time to drawing spiritual power into the self and to really grow that aura, that radiance. And what you will find when you do that is that if somebody's jealous of you or not, so what? Doesn't actually change anything for you. If someone doesn't like you, that's not your problem, that's their problem. You are so nice that obviously everyone should like you, and if they don't, it's really them, they may have a problem, you know. And you need to really be so much positive and in your self-regard and in your self-honor that you, by this positive attitude and by connecting yourself to the source, you are creating an energy and creating an atmosphere such that other things are not going to be able to bother you. And this is absolutely within your capacity, within your power. It's just a matter of paying attention and doing it. And if you're a little weak, then strengthen yourself, because whatever you need to strengthen yourself is available. Yeah.
Thank you, sister. I like that what you said is make time for meditation. We need to do that to empower ourselves. The next question is, there is a saying, how I project myself is how people see me. I try to be nice and kind to people, but people take undue advantage of my kindness or niceness. Is it because I am too kind? What must I do?
Well, you know, I could put it in a slightly different way. If you do not position yourself, other people will position you. And the thing is, many people have been told that all you have to do is be really nice and then people will be nice back to you. But the thing is, this is a fallacy. And you might not have heard that it's a fallacy. Most people think that it's absolutely true. Because you're still putting yourself in a situation where you're looking for the approval of others. And as soon as you do that, they will pick it up and they will not give you approval and play around with you. So the problem is that you have given, I think, undue importance to values or messages that have been given to you by maybe external moral authorities. And what you need to do is to be in your power as a loving, pure, peaceful being who has boundaries. And that's your position. If you try and be nice to everybody and hope that they will be nice to you back, you're not having proper boundaries, you're not really in your power, and you're positioning yourself more in a victim role, maybe without realizing it. So I think what you need to do is just think about yourself as a powerful soul, not just a nice person, but I'm a pure, peaceful, powerful, loveful, blissful being of light. And I am not dependent on somebody else's approval. Acting according to my conscience means acting according to who I am and what I am, and that is fundamentally good. So we need to reconnect with that in order to really be in our power, and that will cause other people to not see us as a victim because we're not positioning ourselves as a victim.
Thank you, sister. The next question is how to set boundaries with difficult people, particularly with those individuals who are critical, controlling, demanding, manipulative, or aggressive.
Yeah, that is quite a challenge, isn't it? You really need to go for the room where the door handle is on the inside, the windows you can shut and open at your will. And when they knock on the door seeking entry, maybe in a very forceful way, you find ways to say, I will see you later. I will see you when you recognize who I am, when you honor me, because you have to really honor yourself. And it gives them a message that they must honor you. And they say, you know, it takes two to tango. So if someone is aggressive, you need to be in your power so that their aggression doesn't really make any difference to you. It doesn't scare you. It doesn't make you cower. You just be in your tranquility, in your power, in your stillness. Give them blessings. And you know, it's not possible for someone to aggress you unless you're susceptible to it. So again, it's about strengthening yourself.
The next question is, Sister, I do not like to listen to gossip, but somehow people just love to give a lot of gossip or news to me and keep me updated. How do I tactfully tell them that I'm not interested, that I don't give them sorrow at the same time?
Well, I think that this word giving sorrow can be misleading. Because anybody can say, you're giving me sorrow, whatever you happen to be doing. So this is why I rather use another criteria, which I think is more practical, and that is, am I harming a person? Not am I giving them sorrow, am I harming them? So if you are changing the subject or saying, I'm terribly busy, I got to go now, I've got other things to do, that doesn't harm them. It might upset them, but it doesn't harm them. But if you are operating on the basis of someone getting displeased with you, you're giving away your power again. And it's not practical, it's not viable. So think of it in a different way. That if you don't want to hear gossip, you just simply tell them, I'm terribly sorry, I'm not really interested. And even if they get upset, it doesn't mean you've harmed them. So do not be afraid of somebody getting displeased because you don't want to hear their gossip, because then they'll soon get the message that you're not available for that. And but you have to be really clear that if somebody's upset, it doesn't mean that you've done anything wrong. If you have harmed them, then you've done something wrong. So I would really not use the word don't give people sorrow. I would change it to don't harm people. And then it's much clearer how to operate.
We have one more question, Sister. About boundaries, you need to avoid bad company. First level of creating boundaries is to avoid bad company. Stay away from toxic relationships. What do you think, Sister Denise?
Well, they might be living in the same house with you, so it might not be so easy. But I think it's about how you engage with them. And I think, again, this expression, do not harm people, is going to help you, because there may be toxic relationships around you and they may be right on top of you, but you need to be, you know, inside your own aura and detached. Imagine in your mind this orb of light around yourself, and they're on the outside of it. And you can also even imagine that there's some kind of television program, and you can turn down the sound, or you can switch channels, or you can be somewhere else in your mind so that they do not really impinge on you. because they will only continue to try to upset you as long as they see that they're succeeding. And if you're not there for it, that's really a very good way to stay away from bad company. And that requires strength, spiritual strength, to really be in your own consciousness of your own self and not react and be independent. It's a very good practice. So if you're around people like that and you practice being independent of them, that in itself will give you quite a lot of personal power, and your boundaries will become more clear to those people because they will not be able to cross them. This is very good.
Thank you so much, sister. So what we need to do is we need to maintain our stage so that nobody else can take over or overpower us. Thank you so much. And maybe we could have a session with you on karma, like how you had brought up karma philosophy. So we do hope to have another session with you. And also, once everything is over, we could have you in Jakarta once again. You have visited Indonesia many a times, but maybe now you can come again and we can have a session with you.
I would be delighted. Thank you so much. And thank you for having me on the program. Just in case anyone wants to really know about karma, I did a big series about it that is there on the internet channel called rajayoga.tv. And then you can see I've done a series with Magla Pillay on karma, destiny, and choice. And that might be good preparation for a session together on karma. It's really a deep and vast subject. But thank you.
Thank you once again. And thank you everyone who's joining us today, watching Sister Denise. I'm sure you all have enjoyed this session as how I have enjoyed this session. And our next session is on coming Saturday, but this time our session will be at 10 Jakarta time. We have Sister Diane Tillman joining us from California. She will be talking about mindful parenting. So do hope all of you can join us once again. Until then, stay safe, stay blessed, stay empowered, the most important thing. Thank you very much. Thank you. Om Shanti.